This town is dying. We need change, and we need it now. We must act!
Subscribe to Wild West Soul Stories. Hit the bell, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching.
The auction block in Dusty Creek had seen many shameful days, but none quite like this sweltering August afternoon in 1882. The townspeople gathered in the square, fanning themselves with newspapers and handkerchiefs, their eyes fixed on the wooden platform where human dignity was traded like livestock. Elijah Stone stood at the back of the crowd, his weathered hat pulled low over his eyes. He was a man of few words, known throughout 3 counties as the cowboy who spoke with his hands in his heart rather than his mouth. Some said he had not uttered more than a dozen sentences in the past 5 years. Others whispered that grief had stolen his voice when he lost his entire family to the fever that swept through the territory. He had come to town for supplies, nothing more. His ranch sat 12 miles outside of Dusty Creek, a modest spread where he raised horses and lived in comfortable solitude. But something made him stop when he heard the commotion in the square. Something pulled him toward that crowd like an invisible rope around his chest. On the platform stood a young woman, perhaps 20 years of age, with hair the color of autumn wheat, and a face that seemed to glow despite the dust and grime that covered her simple dress. Her name was Rosemary Bell, though no one in the crowd knew that. To them, she was simply the blind girl being sold to pay her late father's debts. Her eyes, a pale blue like faded denim, stared at nothing and everything. They were beautiful eyes, empty of sight, but full of something else entirely. Fear, hope, a quiet dignity that refused to be broken despite her circumstances. The auctioneer, a portly man named Henderson, with a voice like gravel, called out to the crowd, "Now, folks, I know what you are thinking. What good is a blind woman? Cannot cook properly, cannot clean properly, cannot do much of anything properly. But she is young and healthy, and her father owed this town a considerable sum before he passed. The law says she must work off his debt. Who will start the bidding?" Silence fell over the crowd. Rosemary stood perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her, listening to the shuffling feet and whispered conversations. She had learned to hear what others missed. She could hear the judgment, the pity, the cruelty hiding behind polite society masks. "Come now," Henderson continued, his frustration evident. "Someone must want her. She can do simple tasks. She is not completely useless." A man in the front row laughed. "I would not pay $1 for her." "Then $1 it is," Henderson declared, desperate to move forward. "Do I hear $1 for this woman?" More silence. Rosemary felt her heart sink deeper into her chest. Not worth $1. That was what her life had amounted to. Not worth a single coin. She thought of her father, the gentleman who had read to her every night, who had described the colors of sunset and the shapes of clouds so vividly that she felt she could see them in her mind. He had loved her completely, and now he was gone, and she was alone in a world that saw her as less than nothing. Elijah watched from the back, his jaw tight, his hands curled into fists at his sides. He had seen injustice before. He had witnessed the cruelty that humans were capable of inflicting upon one another. But something about this moment, about this woman standing alone on that platform, touched a part of his soul he had thought dead. A man finally raised his hand. "I will give you 50 cents. Henderson sighed with relief. 50 cents from Mr. Garrett. "Do I hear more?" Rosemary recognized that voice. Benjamin Garrett owned the saloon at the edge of town. She did not know what he would want with her, but the tone of his voice made her skin crawl. There was something dark in it, something that made her want to run even though she would not make it 3 steps without falling. 75 cents, another man called out, and Rosemary's blood ran cold. She knew that voice too. Edgar Simmons, a rancher known for working his laborers until they dropped. $1, Garrett countered. The 2 men went back and forth while Rosemary stood frozen, listening to strangers haggle over her future. She thought about her mother who had died giving birth to her. She thought about the stories her father had told her, of brave heroes and happy endings. Those stories seemed like lies now. The bidding stopped at $2.50, with Garrett emerging victorious. Henderson was about to close the sale when a voice cut through the crowd like a knife through butter. $20. Everyone turned to look at the tall cowboy standing at the back. Elijah Stone had spoken, and the sound of his voice was so unexpected that people stared as if the mountains themselves had opened their mouths. Henderson blinked rapidly. "Did you say $20, Mr. Stone?" Elijah nodded, then repeated himself, his voice rough from disuse. $20. For her freedom, not her service. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Benjamin Garrett stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Now wait just a moment. You cannot simply buy her freedom. She has a debt to pay." Elijah walked forward, the crowd parting before him like water around a stone. He climbed the 3 steps to the platform and stood before Henderson, pulling a small leather pouch from his coat. He counted out the bills and coins slowly, deliberately, and placed them in the auctioneer's trembling hand. "Her father's debt," Elijah said, his voice steady. "It was $18.63. I am paying $20. The extra goes to the church. Is the debt settled?" Henderson looked down at the money, then at the crowd, then at the cowboy whose eyes held a quiet intensity that discouraged argument. "I suppose it is settled. The debt is paid. She is free." Rosemary heard these words but could not process them. Free? What did that mean for someone like her? Where would she go? How would she survive? She had no family, no home, no money of her own. Freedom sounded beautiful, but it was also terrifying. She felt someone approach her, and then a gentle hand touched her elbow. A voice, low and kind, spoke close to her ear. "You are free now." Rosemary turned toward the voice, toward the stranger who had given her something she never expected to receive. "Who are you?" "Elijah Stone. I have a ranch not far from here. You can stay there until you figure out what you want to do. No strings attached, no debt to repay. Just a place to rest and think." Tears welled in Rosemary's sightless eyes. "Why would you do this for me? You do not know me." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said simply, "Because someone should have done it for my mother. No one did. I made myself a promise that day." He did not explain further, and Rosemary did not ask. There would be time for stories later. For now, she allowed him to guide her down from the platform, through the murmuring crowd, and into a wagon that smelled of hay and leather and honest work. The ride to his ranch took 2 hours. Elijah did not speak much, but Rosemary found his silence comfortable. It was not the cold silence of indifference, but the warm silence of someone who understood that words were not always necessary. When they arrived, he helped her down from the wagon and described the ranch to her as he guided her inside the modest farmhouse. "The front door faces east, so you will feel the morning sun first. 3 steps up to the porch. The kitchen is to the left when you enter. There is a pump for water inside, which is rare, but my father built this place to last. Your room will be the one at the end of the hall. It was my sister's once." Rosemary noticed the catch in his voice when he mentioned his sister. "What happened to her?" "Fever took them all," Elijah said quietly. "My parents, my sister, my wife, your wife. Her name was Margaret. We were married 3 years when she passed." Rosemary's heart ached for this stranger who had shown her such kindness. "I am sorry for your loss, for all of your losses." Elijah cleared his throat. "It was 5 years ago. The grief has softened, but it never really leaves." He showed her around the house, patiently describing every piece of furniture, every doorway, every potential obstacle. He let her touch the surfaces and count the steps until she could navigate the space on her own. His thoughtfulness overwhelmed her. Days turned into weeks. Rosemary discovered that she was not as helpless as the world believed. She learned to cook by touch and smell, producing meals that made Elijah eat more than he had in years. She organized the pantry, mended clothes by feel, and even helped with the horses once Elijah taught her how to approach them safely. The horses seemed to sense her blindness and were gentle with her in ways they were not with anyone else. Elijah watched in amazement as his most stubborn mare nuzzled Rosemary's palm and stood perfectly still while she brushed her coat. "You have a gift," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch, listening to the crick. "Et sing." Rosemary smiled. "My father used to say that losing one sense sharpens the others. I think he was right. I cannot see, but I can feel things that sighted people miss, like the way the air changes before a storm, or the way a horse's muscles tense when it is afraid, or the way a person's voice changes when they are hiding pain," Elijah added quietly. Rosemary turned toward him. "Yes, I heard it in your voice that first day. So much pain buried beneath so few words." Elijah said nothing for a long time. Then, slowly, he began to talk. He told her about Margaret, about how they had met at a church social when he was 22. He told her about their dreams of filling the ranch with children and laughter. He told her about the fever that swept through the territory, taking everyone he loved in less than 2 weeks. "I stopped talking after that," he admitted. "It felt pointless. Who was there to talk to? The horses. The empty rooms. I let the silence become a wall between me and the world. It was easier that way. But you talk to me," Rosemary said softly. "I know. I do not understand it myself. When I saw you standing on that platform, something broke loose inside me. It was like I was looking at my mother again. She was sold when she was young, before she met my father. She told me stories about it. The shame, the fear. She made me promise that if I ever saw someone in that position, I would do what no one did for her." Rosemary reached out and found his hand. She held it gently, feeling the calluses and scars of a lifetime of hard work. "Your mother raised a good man." Elijah felt something stir in his chest, something he had thought buried forever. He looked at Rosemary's face, illuminated by moonlight, and saw not blindness, but beauty, not weakness, but strength, not pity, but possibility. As the months passed, their bond deepened in wall, as neither had expected. Elijah found himself talking more, sharing stories of his childhood, his dreams, his fears. Rosemary listened to every word, remembering every detail, creating pictures in her mind of the man who had given her back her dignity. She began to love him. It happened slowly, like sunrise creeping over the horizon. At first, it was gratitude. Then it was friendship. Then it was something more, something that made her heart race when she heard his footsteps approaching. Something that made her smile at the sound of his voice. Elijah felt it too, but guilt held him back. Was it wrong to love again? Was he betraying Margaret's memory? The questions tormented him until one night when Rosemary stumbled in the dark and he caught her in his arms. They stood there for a moment, her hands on his chest, his arms around her waist. Neither moved, neither breathed. "Rosemary," he whispered. "Yes, I need to tell you something." "Then tell me." He struggled to find the words. "When I brought you here, I thought I was just keeping a promise. I thought I was doing what was right and nothing more. But somewhere along the way, something changed. You changed me. You brought light back into this house. You brought light back into my life." Rosemary's eyes filled with tears. "Elijah, I know you cannot see my face. I know you do not know what I look like. But I need you to know what I feel. I love you, Rosemary. I love you in a way I never expected to love again. And if you do not feel the same, I understand. I will never ask you to leave. This will always be your home regardless of what you say." But I could not keep this inside any longer. Rosemary reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced his features slowly, reverently, creating a picture in her mind more vivid than any sight could provide. She felt the strong jaw, the weathered skin, the lines around his eyes that spoke of sorrow and hard-won wisdom. She felt the moisture on his cheeks and realized he was crying. "I do not need to see you," she said softly. "I know you better than I have ever known anyone. I know the sound of your heart when you are happy and when you are sad. I know the rhythm of your breathing when you sleep. I know the gentleness in your hands and the kindness in your soul. I fell in love with you a long time ago, Elijah Stone. I just did not know how to tell you." He pulled her closer, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, and to him she was. "I want to marry you," he said, "not because you need taking care of, but because I cannot imagine my life without you. Will you have me?" Rosemary laughed through her tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married in the small church in Dusty Creek on a crisp October morning. The whole town came, including many who had watched silently during that shameful auction just 8 months before. Some came out of curiosity, others out of genuine happiness for the couple. But all witnessed something beautiful. The pastor pronounced them husband and wife, and Elijah kissed his bride with a tenderness that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. Even Benjamin Garrett, standing in the back row, felt something shift in his heart as he watched the silent cowboy and the blind girl begin their new life together. Years passed. The ranch flourished. Elijah taught Rosemary to ride, guiding her with his voice until she could gallop across the fields with the wind in her hair. She taught him to cook properly, teasing him mercilessly about his burnt biscuits until he finally mastered the art. They filled the house with love and laughter, and eventually with children. Their first daughter was born on a spring morning, with her mother's golden hair and her father's quiet strength. They named her Hope. Their second child, a son, arrived 2 years later. They named him Samuel, after Elijah's father. Rosemary never regained her sight, but she never felt blind. Elijah became her eyes, describing the world in such vivid detail that she experienced it more fully than most sighted people ever could. He told her about the way their daughter's face lit up when she laughed. He told her about the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He told her about the pride in their son's eyes when he learned to ride his first horse. And every night before they fell asleep, he whispered the same words he had spoken on that dusty auction block so many years ago. "You are free now." But Rosemary always corrected him. "No," she would say, smiling in the darkness. "We are free now, together." On their 25th wedding anniversary, the children threw them a party. The house was full of friends and neighbors, food and music, joy and celebration. Elijah led his wife to the dance floor and held her close as the fiddle played a slow waltz. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked. Rosemary laughed. "How could I forget? I was standing on an auction block worth less than $1 to everyone in that town." "You were never worth less than anything," Elijah said fiercely. "They were blind, not you. They could not see what I saw." "And what did you see?" Elijah pulled back slightly and cupped her face in his hands, even though he knew she could not see the love shining in his eyes. "I saw the woman who would save my life. I saw the woman who would teach me how to speak again, how to feel again, how to live again. I saw the woman I would love until my last breath, and beyond." Rosemary reached up and touched his face, just as she had on the night he first told her he loved her. His features had changed over the years. There were four lines now, more weathering from sun and wind and time. But beneath it all, she felt the same man she had fallen in love with, the same gentle soul, the same quiet strength. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when no one else could. For speaking when you had forgotten how. For loving me when I did not love myself. For making me free." Elijah kissed her forehead. "You made yourself free, Rosemary. I just opened the door. You were the one brave enough to walk through it." They held each other as the music played, two souls who had found each other against all odds, two hearts that beat as one. Outside, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the moon. But inside that farmhouse, there was only love, only gratitude, only the quiet miracle of two broken people who had made each other whole. And they lived that way for the rest of their days, free together, loved forever, proof that even in the darkest moments of life, hope can arrive on horseback, whisper 4 simple words, and change everything. You are free now. The end.